You know, Stephen, St. Matthew was an option for today, but here we are with these readings instead. This is the time of year when all over the Episcopal Church people are preparing for stewardship season. What does your money mean to you, and how do you hold on to it? The readings are brutal. You cannot serve God and mammon, was the way the Old King James Version of this reading ended. God and mammon. Mammon, differently than wealth or money, which are the other ways this can be translated. Mammon sounds like the name of a god or character. The same word is found throughout Europe and the Middle East, and its derivation from Syria literally points to a personification of wealth, a Syrian god. Gregory of Nyssa calls Mammon a personification of Beelzebub, literally Lord of the Flies, a name for the evil one of the 7 princes of hell in the Middle Ages, along with the personifications of pride and lust and envy and wrath, the great sins. Foundationally, Mammon is a name for a kind of evil in pre-Christian and pre-Jewish thought of the ancient Near East, carried seamlessly into today by our great old translations of the Bible, a name for a long time ago Syrian god of money. There is so much wisdom in ancient cultures. I am aware of the irony of speaking about money here in this place that required and demands so much money of us. We know about money here and what it can do. We raise it and we spend it to polish these magnificent stones, to keep the roof up, to keep the organs singing. At our best, we are tending a tribute to the capacity of we as a people to accomplish anything we set our minds to praise and honor God who has brought us this far, to enshrine in stone our commitments to the immigrant, to free speech and thought, to the love and worship of a God who insists on loving all and insists it of us, a God beyond us that calls us to horizons so far beyond the limits of today. Here, we call that God down to see us, to be among us, and invite us into God's vision of healing. And we stand sure on these firm commitments, as sure as this stone. But it means something that the word mammon was held on to for all of that time. They could have translated it as wealth or money in those translations as well, which would have been a challenge to the princes and lords of the time, as it is today to our ears to hear it. Maybe they were trying to avoid the direct confrontation you see in today's reading. You cannot serve God and wealth. A perplexing dilemma here, where the rent is really far too high, as that candidate always reminds us, but making your income to pay it is a fundamental part of how we all live, making all of us among the wealthy of the planet. What do we do with a reading like this, especially if we do not worry about our income month to month, if our families were incredibly fortunate in the past, or if our labor produces very generous income or will in our own futures? What do you do with this? Here is the parable we are considering today, a rich man, and to be very clear, not God or Jesus, but a nameless rich man. We in the U.S. often read the strongest character in the parable as God. Let's be clear that it doesn't say that or imply it. In other contexts, if you live in certain parts of the world, the rich man indicates to the listener the bad guy. Notice what meaning you are inclined to make from the beginning. A rich man has a manager, we read. Another reasonable interpretation that Mark Davis says you could use for that word translated as manager is economist. Now that's fun. If you mark that in your text, this starts to get really interesting. But we can go with manager, it's what we heard. The manager is being called on the carpet. The rich man has learned that something is wrong with his books. The manager, the economist, the CFO, has to defend himself. Translation is really complicated. Languages that don't line up with the same logic as Bishop Roscom has just reminded us in her efforts to learn French these days in France. Any of you that speak multiple languages know this, and ancient languages, because no one is using them right now in the way that they were used thousands of years ago, are full of riddles for us. We don't know what they meant, we guess. We have to make choices in interpretation, and many are made to get the clear reading that you get today. Choices have been made. Next Sunday's preacher, Dr. Will Gaffney, is one of the premier translators of the Hebrew Bible today, and she writes about the intentionality of whatever interpretive choice always being made, and what difference who the interpreter is, what values they carry, and what other languages they have chosen to learn can make. So one, not terribly subtle word to note is that the manager said. Said. Is the manager now speaking out loud and moving forward in time? Or is the manager in a gospel dream sequence of some kind, remembering? Or is the manager saying to his boss, "This is what I did"? The translators made some choices about the verb tenses and punctuation that could have been validly done in other ways, shifting the story. So is this the story of a rich man in a chariot sending a message received by a manager who then does a bunch of deals before reporting to the rich man who has arrived in his chariot? Or is it a sort of trial where all of it is happening in one scene and that CFO is saying, "Here's what happened. I'm the in-between guy. I didn't have a plan for my future. I saw where things were headed for us, sir. I took the ledger you handed me, and I lowered what everyone owed to make them loyal to me and maybe to you by extension." And the rich man says, "Nicely done." Maybe. Luke is on a rampage about money and inequity, about landowners and the rich far away who require tribute from the poor close. It is clearly a dilemma in their communities. The historical record says that it is a huge part of the imperial project at the time, like antebellum America, sharecropping, or mill or mining towns in this part of the country, weights of debt that people could not get out from under, and it was designed that way. It is so important that Jesus gives it a whole section when asked by his disciples how they should pray. The revolution in the Lord's Prayer that is best translated as, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." Not help us pay off what we rightly owe, amen, but forgive us our debts because we will forgive those who owe us. The Bible talks concretely about money more than any other topic because it is foundational to our human experience, the monetizing of every aspect of their lives, and it's already happening in the Hebrew Bible. The monetizing of everything, and most brutally, our labor, our very bodies, and our time, arguably all we have. In Amos, the evil is named in the valuation of the currency, in the monetizing of what must be left for the hungry by the commandment of God in the fields. An ancient world stripping for profit or maximizing efficiency on the backs of humans, particularly the most vulnerable. The economy, God's economy, is for God's people, for the thriving of the person, God says throughout the Hebrew Bible, not for the storing up of grain that will rot, we read. The communal living which the Bible describes as covenant, because in our ordered living in societies, we take on some of the powers of God. Some of us have more and some have less. So if there is more, there is responsibility for the ones who will have nothing without a shared covenantal life in mutual support. A biblical economy is fundamentally not compatible with the economy we live in this country. Definitely not with the chattel slavery or mass incarceration or detention, or wages that keep people perpetually in debt or unhoused. It speaks directly to it. All of our lives are precious in the sight of God. God's economy wastes and cares and multiplies miraculously. God's economy is for losers. God's economy does not deify mathematical formulas claiming to declare the universal truth of inequity and mass human suffering. That economy's name is mammon. God, through the prophets, beginning with Moses, speaks directly to the economy, and in Jesus, in these parables, points to the folly of pretending that debts as they are constructed are a truth. This guy just changes them because they are changeable. And look at that. Like forgiving student debt and noticing an uptick of economic activity because those that carried that debt can now buy groceries where they were before plowing their money into banks for a past activity, their education. When we attach morality to immoral or at best morally neutral things like debt, a morality tied to what money we or our ancestors earned, where we find ourselves in the stack of wealth and property in this world. Our God has nothing to do with that, except this. The Bible tells us we cannot serve our God if we serve this idol. We cannot serve its logic. We cannot serve its cruelty. We cannot be seduced by its comforts. We cannot sacrifice anyone's children, anyone's life to it. It is that corrosive and misleading. It is not simply the card on your phone or the paper in your pocket. It will lead you from God if you follow its logic. So we give away, we share, we question, we do not look away from the need in front of us. We work to build cities and nations that shake the sheaves for chaff and kindness. We remember the world God has given us a vision to love. And we bring our hopes and dreams to this table where we meet God, that we may go forth in joy, praising and worshiping the God of all.